We want to hand this off to a gentleman that's been in solar for some time now, Michael Patterson. He's notoriously known, I think, as the battery expert on here. He knows the most about batteries, Enphase batteries, SolarEdge batteries, and he's crushing it. He's in Florida. He's an amazing mentor. So Mike, let me make sure you can share your screen and talk to us about SolarEdge batteries.
All right, thanks for having me. Let me get my screen shared here.
And Michelle, Spina, real quick, are you still in the room?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm really here for moral support and any type of support needed.
Neil's here too. Hey,
Neil's
John.
here, yeah.
Oh, Neil, hey guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Just everyone on here and watching this recording. Michelle and Neil with SolarEdge are here for support, part of the team. Check out that training at PowurCounter.com every week. But yeah, they'll be here for support. Type questions into the chat and they'll help get to them. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
All right, can you see my screen? Did I do that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. So this is a newer battery option. You've all seen me talk about the Enphase batteries before. Why they're so valuable, especially here in Florida, why we've been selling so many of them. You know, this being a newer option, just started selling them, and there's quite a few features about it that I actually like better. So we'll go through what the SolarEdge batteries are, how they work, do a little bit of a comparison, and then we can take some questions. So, you know, not to spend too much time on this, we've done this before, but why would you add storage? Biggest reason here is people want backup power in case of an outage. They want their solar to be able to continue to produce when the grid is down. They want to be able to keep running, you know, whatever level of appliance they need. Some people just want to decrease their reliance on the grid. And a lot of people, especially with time of use rates, which are probably going to grow here if that bill gets signed. I know you have them big time out west. You can do what's called peak shifting, meaning you rely on the battery during your peak times, your expensive times, and then you can take from the grid when it's cheap. So you shift your peak demand to the cheapest time of the day, and it can really earn its money back doing that. And finally, a lot of people just want to decrease their reliance on net metering, especially if the utility has low buyback rates. You can do this, you can future-proof them. Like I said, if that anti-solar bill does get signed here in Florida, this is going to be our way forward. And this is what we're already doing with the co-ops and the municipal utilities. So the SolarEdge EnergyBank, you can see here in the picture, the batteries on the left, you got your regular inverter, actually a EnergyHub inverter in the middle, and then the disconnect on the right. You can see it's a pretty compact, sleek looking unit. We'll get into that. So the basics about it, just like the older Enphase, they come with 10 kilowatt hour increments. I'm not a big fan of anything smaller than a 10 to begin with, so that's perfect for our uses here. It is a DC coupled battery, which we'll get into in some more depth in a minute. You have to tie it to an EnergyHub inverter. So when you go through and you pick your inverter on your system design, make sure it says EnergyHub. Now, also these batteries have nickel, cobalt, manganese, hard to pronounce, chemistry on the cathode. That's common in all of your electric vehicles. That's why it's a more compact unit. It's the most energy dense chemistry that you have out there. You know, it's what your Teslas and Ford Lightnings and everything are running because of how much power you get per unit volume. And then finally, just like all the other batteries, you have a 10-year warranty, but what sets this apart is its unlimited cycles, meaning you can charge, discharge as many times as you want without wearing out your warranty before that 10 years. Anyone who's doing peak shifting on time of use or using this for self-reliance, you're going to go through those cycles pretty quick. So unlimited is a pretty cool feature. So what is an AC coupled battery? What's a DC coupled battery? AC coupling is what you're probably more familiar with. That's your Enphase, your Tesla Powerwall, and so on. Those batteries have their own inverters, meaning inside the battery, you've got the battery itself, plus either a single inverter like Tesla or series microinverters like the Enphase. They operate independently from the solar inverter. Downside to this is electricity is produced on the roof at the panels in DC, converted at some point to AC, and then when it gets to the battery, it has to be converted back to DC, where it's stored and then converted back to AC to be used. Every conversion has a loss of energy. So 3 conversions before you're actually using this power, you're losing energy every step of the way. DC coupled batteries bypass the inverter. So they share the main system inverter as the PV. But when the power is produced, it doesn't get converted until it's used. So you produce the power on the roof in DC. If it's going to be used right away, it goes through the inverter, becomes AC, gets used. If it's going to be stored, it bypasses the inverter, goes into the battery, staying in DC. Then when it gets pulled back from the battery, it goes into the inverter again, gets converted, and there's only a single conversion before use. So there's less potential energy loss through your conversions. Like I said, you have to have the Energy Hub. This is actually my favorite thing about this battery. To an extent, a battery is a battery as long as it's a quality cell. But what really sets them apart is the inverter. So you have to use the Energy Hub inverter for the EnergyBank batteries. As I mentioned, they function as the solar inverter and as the battery inverter. So it all goes through the same thing. In the future, there'll be generator integration. You can also build an EV charger in, which I'll talk about towards the end. I really, really like their EV charger. I'm excited that we're getting that back, but we'll get into that. So to compare, we'll do an apples to apples comparison. A 10 kilowatt hour EnergyBank versus the IQ10 that we've been selling. The biggest difference you'll see here is the power output. The SolarEdge, because it's running through a larger inverter, is sustaining 5 kilowatts of power and can peak for starting cycles on, say, an air conditioner, can peak at 7.6 kilowatts. The equivalent Enphase battery can only sustain 3.8 kilowatts and can only peak at 5.7. Besides that, you'll see the capacity is nearly the same. The SolarEdge battery does cost a little bit more for the first 10 anyways. And then, as I mentioned, it has the 10-year unlimited cycle warranty, where the Enphase has a 10-year but 4,000 cycle. So if you go through the 4,000 before 10 years, your warranty's up. This comparison was done with the 7600 EnergyHub inverter that is the current largest we have on Solo. We are adding the 10,000 and 11,400 EnergyHubs, which both have a sustained power output of 10 kilowatts. So almost double what the Enphase can put out. Same capacity, higher power output. That really leads to, and math here ahead, its biggest advantage, the power output. So without getting too intricate here, power is what it takes to start an appliance. It's your kilowatts. It's equal to the volts times the amps. So if you take that 7600 inverter we talked about, you're going to be able to put out 34.5 theoretical amps starting capacity. With soft start, this might even be able to start a residential air conditioner. You upgrade that to the 10,000, now we're putting out 45 amps sustained. That's not even a starting peak. So that inverter runs on a 63 amp breaker. You're going to be starting larger appliance much easier with this. By comparison, the IQ10 5700 watts of peak power is only putting out 25.9 amps. With a soft start, maybe a small air conditioner, but any whole home backup, 20 is the minimum, 20 kilowatt hours is the minimum you should be doing. But if we're talking 20 kilowatt hour battery putting out as high as 63 amps, or if you run them on twin 7600s as high as 70 amps, compared to 50, basically, you're going to be starting a lot larger of appliances. You're going to have a much more stable system, less chance of a brownout, less chance of a system failure. For anywhere that you need to back up large appliances, like here in Florida, where everybody needs their AC all the time, this is the way to go. So what's the best use for each of them? EnergyBank, it's best designed for your worst case scenario, right? When you're not producing a lot of solar, you are relying for as much power output from the battery as you can. You have less energy lost in conversion, which is good when it's cloudy. You really need all the energy that you're making, and you're able to fully take advantage of that inverter through the battery. The IQ battery, I'll admit, it is potentially better for systems where you maybe have a very large solar to PV ratio, or a PV to battery ratio, a very large solar system to a small battery. Advantage there with the AC coupling is you have two separate sets of inverters. So you're not maxing out your inverter with one or the other. They're able to work simultaneously. That being said, here in Florida, at least, most of our outages are almost always weather related. When the grid is down here, it's typically dark sky with bright flashes of lightning. It's maybe a hurricane after the storm's passed, it gets nice out, but I build the systems here for worst case scenario. And in the worst case scenario, when I'm dealing with customers who all want their AC backed up, half the time they tell me AC before they tell me refrigerator when I ask them for their priorities. If I need to back up an AC, I need the highest power output possible. And I need power output that I can rely on, not power output that I'm hopeful for good weather. So the larger the appliance I can back up safely, the better I'm able to sell that system, the better system I'm able to build for the customer. So what I've been doing lately is the SE7600 EnergyHub, usually 2 of those with 2 of the batteries. So 2 EnergyHubs, 20 kilowatt hour battery. I'm putting out 15.2 kilowatt hours of starting power. Able to start and sustain much larger appliances this way. And it's just meeting what my customers are demanding. So when you go into solo, you got to build these, and I warn you, some of this is about to change. First of all, I always do my mission panels, shout out to them. But right now we've got 2 EnergyHubs, and I put the wrong one in here. There's EnergyHub 3800 also. So 7600, 3800. That's the size of your inverter, just like if you were doing any other SolarEdge inverter. So if the system is appropriately sized for a single 7600, you pick that. If it's a large system, this should default to multiply that by 2. If it doesn't, come talk to me. That's hopefully getting fixed soon. But make sure you have one of these inverters. In addition to that, you have to go to the adders and you pick SolarEdge storage. Pick the 10 or 20, that's about to change. But pick based on what size you want, and then make sure to put the backup interface. Like I said, that's basically your disconnect. That's what ties everything together. That's all you need to add for this. Okay. Now what's changing is, like I mentioned, we have the 3800, the 7600. We're adding the 10 and 11 as well. In addition to that, where these inverters were previously limited at 2 batteries per inverter, it's now up to 3. So we're going to have larger battery systems here up to 30 kilowatt hours. And again, that's per inverter. So if you've got a very large system, someone with very large needs, you could theoretically do a pair of 10,000s with 3 batteries on each. And you're going to have a lot of storage capacity, a lot of energy in that case. Plus you're going to be putting out 20,000 watts of sustained power, which is quite a bit. You'll be able to start quite a bit. So as I mentioned, the flexibility is on its way. Combining the different inverters, you can mix and match. You can do a 10,000 and a 7600, whatever you need to do. And you can get the larger batteries tied in with that. So as I mentioned, you currently can't mix and match them on solo. You currently can't force solo to give you doubles if it doesn't think you need doubles. But when the system goes to engineering, they're going to put the right inverter in there. Just because, if you have a 15 kilowatt system and solo thinks you're fine with 17600, just because solo said so doesn't mean that's what they're going to install. So if you think it needs double, allow it to go with the single, account for the extra price in the margin, and notify the PM when you sign the deal. We are working to fix this, get it better addressed, so that way you can see more accurate production estimates, better pricing where you're not guessing and building into the margin. But just know, if you need a larger system and solo doesn't let you, you can do it. And the biggest thing, as I found out this morning, big shout out to Neil for being on a very long call with me this morning. We have the 10 and 11 coming, and those are going to be huge. That's going to be able to get the vast majority of your residential systems on a single inverter. With their oversizing that you can do with the SolarEdge inverters is pretty incredible. And being able to sustain a 10,000 10,000 watt power output off grid is pretty awesome. You're going to be able to start and run these larger appliances with a much more reasonably sized system in the worst case scenarios. Also, we had some talks. They're going to be developing smart switches. They're in the process right now. They're working on generator integration, which should come this year. And they're even working on collaborations with Nest and Span to really get a lot of the appliances in your house talking to your system, which is huge when we get to off-grid mode. All right, you probably want your air conditioner to run off grid, but do you want it running to the same extent that you do when you have the grid there to back you up? Probably not. So if your air conditioner is already being controlled by something like Nest, if it can talk and know when you're on and off grid and know, hey, let's keep running, let's keep the house livable, but we don't necessarily need it at 72. Things like that can really extend your off-grid storage. And there's some collaborations that I'm really looking forward to. At this point, any questions, any thoughts? So we got a ton of chat here.
Nice, Mike. Yeah, we can go through some of the chat questions, perhaps. I'm sure there's a few here. And just as a disclaimer, if you're newer here, obviously work with a mentor, work with your leadership. You don't have to know all this. Don't try to know all this. Just get the electric bill and let your mentor do the rest. This is really great high-level information. I have lots of questions myself. So thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, and please screenshot or write down his information. So let's go through some of these questions. What is the lifespan for SolarEdge batteries?
So just like all of them, basically, whether you're talking SolarEdge, Enphase, Tesla, LG, Generac, they're all giving 10-year warranties. The difference here is it's 10 years with no limit on cycles. So what I usually tell people is expect, if you're using the battery heavily, expect somewhere in the 12 to 14 year range. Obviously they're going to keep working, but like any lithium ion battery that you've had, every charge discharge gets a little bit smaller. So that warranty covers 70% of its original capacity. If it drops below that before then, it would be warrantied out. After that, if it drops below that, you can replace it. You can keep it based on what your needs are. And actually, interesting, I reached out to Ken today. Based on my conversation with Neil earlier, we should be able to be offering these with Sonova now, which would up your warranty to 25 years.
And I do believe Solar Insure is working on a battery adder, perhaps as well.
Which would be awesome.
For us.
Hearing that for a year.
Yeah, it might be a while.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I asked, so a battery with SolarEdge does require an EnergyHub inverter?
Yes.
Okay, and that's why you said the 10,000, 11,000 EnergyHub is coming.
Right. And it should be, they're available. So we had an email with Matt today, Matt Gordon, and we're trying to get them added ASAP.
Because if you had like a 16 kilowatt system with one battery, you would need without those two, you would need like a 70 EnergyHub plus a 6,000 regular. Is that right? You'd have to combine them.
Yeah, I mean, or you could do, if you wanted to future-proof for extra batteries, what I would do in that case with our current is just double 76s. With the new one, if you said 16 kW, if it was, unless we're talking like a perfect unshaded South California, or
Right.
Southern California, Florida, Arizona, where you got good sun intensity,
11.
the 11 would more than cover that for 95% of systems out there.
Perfect.
If you do have to double up though, is it okay to do a one EnergyHub and the other a standard, or do they both need to be hubs?
Michelle or Neil, do you want to chime in on that one?
They could be either or. So you can use a secondary regular inverter or you can use another EnergyHub. Keep in mind, of course, you can oversize quite a bit more. So it would be a pretty large system if you did need 2 or 3.
Right.
Is there any downfall to doing one EnergyHub, one standard, or is it this? Or are you just saving money at that point because you don't
Just
have to
saving, just saving money on the front end. I mean, part of why we have different sizes is to try to find some more opportunities to save cost. When you look at, a fleet, if you can save $500 every other system, right, it really starts to add up in the margin. So yeah, that's why we have the different sizes.
Cool.
And Jarrett, for your question there, if you mix and match one EnergyHub, one not, in the future, should they want to add extra battery capacity, you're going to have to do an inverter swap now. And my point of view from at least, the Florida mindset, the customers I'm working with, is the upfront cost difference is not that noticeable. I'd rather future-proof, set them up for success, and give, have it either the larger EnergyHub that we're doing now, or 2 EnergyHubs. So that way, should they want to add a battery in the future, it's plug and play. It's
Right.
not having to go in and modify.
Is the energy only inverting through the one with the energy hub?
For the battery, whichever one the battery is connected to. So if you've got one battery and it's connected to that one energy hub, that energy hub is taking care of all of its inverting.
Wow. So yeah, if you did have
for
like
the battery, yeah.
You had like 3 batteries and you had
Yeah.
a massive system, but you only had one 7600 energy hub. That's taking on the entire load. For
Yeah.
all 3 batteries.
My thought is, unless you just need capacity, if you're doing 3 batteries, I'd want to be 10,000 or larger to take advantage of the higher sustained and peak power outputs.
Right. Nice. And of course, the Energy Hub does allow for an EV charger to be added to it too, right?
Yeah, so any of their inverters do. That's, we've had it in the adders for a while. I've put it on a couple systems, been told that it's unavailable and they're changing them to juice boxes just because of supply chain issues. It sounds like we're able to get them again, and I really like their EV charger. My house, I can use this as an example. Any of the houses that I go to on the regular down here in Florida, they're built with 200 amp panels. If you have anything in addition to our standard appliance load, because everything's electric here, your panel's full. There's no room. You don't have the room to put in these very large level 2 chargers that the cars are coming with now. So being able to run their charger where it's plugged in and wired through the inverter itself, rather than as a dedicated breaker on the main panel, is a huge advantage here, especially since the majority of our systems are run as a line side tap anyways. We're basically getting that extra capability without having to do a 400 amp panel or combine circuits or something like that crazy.
Nice. Very cool. All right, Larry McKinney asked, what is the smallest system size we can use to operate the battery properly? California has some small systems without air conditioning. So like, I'm guessing he's referring to, could you get away with a 3 kilowatt, a 4 kilowatt system with a battery, or is that not really make sense?
Yeah, and you could do that with the 3800 Energy Hub. You do the 3800, you decrease your power output to 3800, or give or take. So you're not going to be starting an air conditioner, but if that's not a concern, you're also going to have a greater longevity on that battery because it'll take you a lot longer to go through 10 kilowatt hours of stored power or stored energy. So yeah, a 3 or 4 kW system with a 3800. The key here is making sure that you're producing enough to cover what you need to use during dark hours. So if you're producing enough to meet your needs and put the extra into the battery up to and including the 10 kilowatt hours in that case, and you're using less than that or equal to that overnight or during dark times, you'll be that perfect infinite loop where charge, discharge, charge, discharge.
Do you have a general rule of thumb though, like in the winter with a little bit of load shifting and 7 panels just to fill the battery, I'm just imagining like 12 panels or more should really be like the rule if you're adding a battery. Do you have any rule of thumb like that?
I don't. For me, like I said, it depends on what are you expecting the battery to do. Mm-hmm. If it's something where a 4 kW system is all that the house needs, then that should be providing plenty. And you say winter, we don't really have that here. So it could be a little different. What we call winter is about 2 weeks where your power usage actually goes up quite a bit because we run our air conditioners backwards for heat as heat pumps. So, right. Our needs do go up some, but what is the correct PV size for the house? And it gets more complicated if you're Jordan and you're putting a 3rd and 4th system on someone's house and they're not all working together. But if we're talking the full system for that house, if a 4 kW system is providing all the electrical needs for that house, it's going to provide for that house and put its extra into storage rather than the grid, and then you'll be able to pull it from the storage.
Got it. Okay, I have a couple questions here, and we got one more, and then we'll get to Chris here in a sec. So just to clarify, Mike, we do have to add the backup interface.
Yes.
Per battery, or just one for any battery?
One for every 3 energy hubs. So if you are building a monster system, like I know you like to sometimes, and you need
Got it.
4 inverters, for example, you would need two of the backup interface. But
Okay.
at 1 through 3 inverter count, you're fine with 1.
And a lot of us know that there's about $2,500 of margin in the Enphase adder, which could result in, you know, $1,800 commission just to be conservative. State to state taxes vary, but have you seen your cost sheet on the SolarEdge battery yet? Is there $2,500 of margin?
I don't remember the exact number. I do know that it is higher. It's higher than it is for Enphase.
Okay, nice. I'm sure there's an asset that Powur can get us, and Michelle and Neil, that shows the margin approximately.
There
Yeah,
was a, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I remember Jonathan going through it at Evolution. I know that they have a slide for it.
Okay, great. We can get that. Perfect.
And it's floating out there in the PowurHitters mentor chat. I've seen it brought up a couple times.
Okay, and then my last question before Chris here, load shifting, right? With the other guys, I guess there's an app, you can define the percentage. Here in California, you don't really want to pull it back at night. You want to load shift 60, 70% during the day. I know with SolarEdge and LG batteries from 2 years ago that I sold, they could define this split on load shifting. So is that still a thing? Is it app driven? Is it programmed in the inverter? How can we load shift?
Yeah, it's all through the app. I actually, that was one thing that they used to say was, I guess, one of the drawbacks on SolarEdge was their app wasn't as user-friendly. It was very industrial. My system is, like I said, I have the Tesla batteries from back when they were really the only option. And for my production, I actually prefer the SolarEdge app now with the latest updates to the Tesla app. It's very user-friendly. And just speaking from systems that I've had installed, irregardless of the battery, I've gotten much better feedback on the SolarEdge app than I have on the Enphase app lately. There's been quite a few glitches. It's a lot easier to read. And to your point there, you can program it to do what you need. You can program storm mode, you can program your reserve limit, you can put in your utility structure so it knows when to prioritize the battery and when not to.
Nice.
The way I described it was basically how we do it here for our co-op utilities is we switch them to a time of use scheme, make sure that we're running on PV and battery during peak times and selling back during peak times. And then if we need to take power back from the grid, we're doing it off peak when it's, pennies on the dollar.
Nice. Cool. Thank you. And then Chris, thanks for holding here. What question do you have?
Well, yeah, you actually answered the question already, but I have a 3-part question. The load shifting and peak load shaving, you actually discussed that already. Is that controlled through the SolarEdge app
Yep.
with a software? So we just got to educate our clients in terms of programming those on peak hours for load
Yep.
shifting.
Yeah, you just have to get used to a different app, but that's why I brought up. It's my opinion. I'm not a computer person, and it's much more user friendly in my experience. It's the way it presents everything, the way you go through the settings, at least on the customer facing part of the app, is much more user friendly and intuitive.
It's software driven, right?
Yes.
And on the operating temperature and environment, what's the extreme heat and cold operating temperature or discharge temperature for a battery like this for SolarEdge?
Neil, this sounds like a question for you.
Yeah, actually, we had this come up earlier, but I'm going to turn to Michelle on this. Do you remember the exact rating on that warranty sheet?
So the ambient temperature of the location has to be between 0 degrees and 105 degrees, at least 95% of the time. So say you're in an area that area gets over 105 degrees, say 10 days out of the year, for example, it's still in the warranty. So it has to be 95% of the time.
95% of the year is 18 days, and we're talking 24 hours. So it could be like a month of time a month of days over 105 or let's say just at 105 and you'd still be under warranty. So it's pretty hard to exceed that warranty unless you're in an extremely cold or extremely hot place.
Maybe get to 128 or extreme heat, but that's high peak July. I've seen 130s here on high peak July. So that's not a recommended
We just
operating.
Oh, so
wouldn't,
it's
Garage.
Hi, Michelle.
we just wouldn't recommend installing it outside in that case. So, you know, it's the ambient temperature of the location where it's installed.
On extreme cold like Illinois.
Mhm.
So it's like minus 25. It wouldn't be a good recommendation too.
Not for outdoor installation. So generally we would see it in the garage or something in that case.
Okay. And on the life cycles on the max discharge and recharge, if it's being depleted 100% occasionally, more than often, it doesn't void out the 10-year.
No,
Bridge.
no. So they have unlimited cycles, like Mike said. You can charge and discharge as many times, or you can leave it stored, whatever that homeowner needs.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. And Michelle actually put in the chat, everyone can download the My SolarEdge app. I'm actually playing with it right now because I downloaded it. There's a bunch of demo sites, so make sure to
Mike,
check
hopefully
that out.
this means we've converted Jonathan.
What's that?
He's already downloaded the My SolarEdge app. I think we're slowly converting Jonathan. Ha ha ha.
At least opening his eyes.
Yep.
So I don't play one side or the other. If you look at my deals, I am probably close to a 50-50 split. It probably was more heavily tilted Enphase before, when that was the only battery that we had, just because how many of my deals have the batteries. But my belief is you should look at each individual system, and there's times that Enphase is probably better, and there's times that SolarEdge is probably better. And you know, the homeowners trusting us to figure out what's best for them and make our recommendation.
Well said. Well, with that, you know, we're going to just wrap up the recording here, but we'll hang out to do a little open forum. Mike Patterson, truly appreciate your leadership, your knowledge, sharing, closing deals, being positive, being constructive. You're the man. I can't wait to meet you. So,
Yeah.
thank
Gotta come to
Michelle,
Florida.
he's
I don't think I'd be
ours.
welcome in California.
Okay, don't be offering him any job applications or opportunities. He's with Powur,
I'll
not.
go to Florida.
I would
Yeah.
never.
Michelle with SolarEdge, if you just want to wrap us up in this last minute here, any resources, anything we should know, anything about
Yeah. So one quick thing too, I'll put it in the chat box as well. We just came out with this. I know that this team has been asking for something like this. So with battery systems, you have to, when you have a battery as a manufacturer, you have to enroll your battery into incentive programs across the country. So I just put in the chat box a new page we have in finding the incentive for your area. I know that a lot of you sell in multiple states, and so it's hard to keep those incentives for homeowners straight. All of the information with batteries, EV chargers are in that drop down for, oh, and a good one, Chris. Yeah, SGIP will be there in very, very short form. So we are available on SGIP. The documentation's just not uploaded yet. Look back in maybe 3 days and it should be up there.
Very cool. And just on that note, Natalie Morris is with the incentives team here. If you see her email in the chat, SGIP, at least in SoCal Edison, is a little bit full right now, but there should be new funds opening, hopefully. So don't promise it. It can take months and months and months and months after install. It's roughly $1,600 on the low end, but don't guarantee it. Don't even bring it up if you don't want to. That's my advice for the SGIP and SoCal Edison.
I agree, Jonathan. SGIP is probably the most challenging one right now in terms of incentives. The other ones in the other states are a bit more straightforward. So if you are selling in other states, definitely take a look at those.
Cool. Awesome. Nice resource, Michelle. Appreciate you guys being here again. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the PowurHitters team, Jared, everyone for being here today. Let's go have a great week and kick some ass. I'm going to end this recording.
Miles, I see your hat.
Nice.